This is a Culture Inject production.
Welcome back, listeners. This week we're discussing En Vogue's adventures in television and film, from discussions about potential television series produced by Hollywood heavyweights Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold to the prospect of a live-action remake of Josie and the Pussycats starring En Vogue. But first, we want to remind you where you can download all of our episodes of this podcast. Head over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Amazon Music to find any of our past episodes. And make sure to follow us on all of our socials at Part of Us Fancast on Twitter and En Vogue Craze on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. If you were anticipating a re-release of Soulflower to coincide with its 20th anniversary last month, then you found yourself disappointed. February came and went, and the group didn't unveil anything to commemorate the album's milestone. Whomp-whomp-whomp. However, Soulflower is En Vogue's fifth full album and their inaugural album featuring Rona, so it's super special. Still, and not many fans own a copy of this album and have been asking that it be made available digitally so that they can add it to their collections. They've reissued two of their previous albums. Why not this one? So,
well, why not this one? I mean, I don't think En Vogue had anything to do with the reissue of the first two. I mean, they were signed to major labels, and so the reissue thing is above the artist's heads. You know, they don't own they don't own the masters, they don't own it, so it's whatever the label feels like putting out. Soulflower was an independent release. The label that it was released on no longer exists, so
yeah. So but somebody owns it. Somebody owns it somewhere along the line, but yeah.
But I guess it's not a priority,
So, you know, since there's been no re-release, nor have any unreleased tracks made their debut, not a thing. So, is this, a missed opportunity? We'll wait. So, there's been no re-release, nor have any unreleased tracks made their debut. Nada. So, listeners, how do you all feel about that? Is this a missed opportunity by En Vogue? What are your thoughts? Make sure to let us know, and we will bring it up on a future episode.
What do you think, though?
I think it is the same thing. I think it's label politics. I think it's like the business side that's rearing its ugly head.
I mean, do you think it's like a missed opportunity? Do you feel like it's something that could help the brand overall? Do you think it would make an impact? Like, are folks clamoring for Soulflower on digital? In the landscape of En Vogue, how would releasing this to digital push the needle forward or move the needle?
It will not. It will not. I do think that when I put my PR hat on, I think that there's something to be spun here about reintroducing something that maybe a lot of people missed. So for those, because there's still a steady amount of folks who are fans, but sort of maybe hop in and out. And maybe since we're in this sort of nostalgia pocket, there would have been something really fun about bringing this album up in subtle ways. It didn't need a big whatever, but
something. I find it so interesting though, because I'm noticing a lot of nostalgia, a lot of old things are getting press runs. I saw a soul food press run because it's coming to digital, and I'm like there's not even a director's cut or it's literally just hey, for the first time ever.
Is that why? That was why Vanessa Williams and Vivica were on
they were on
the morning
Good
show?
Morning America, because it was it was being released on Hulu. For the first time ever, it's on streaming and it's on Hulu. And it was let's celebrate. Wow. There's no director's cut, no unseen footage or anything. It's literally just we're letting you know it's on streaming, which is, I think it's interesting that seeing these sort of campaigns that different entities are pushing for some of their nostalgia releases. So I think anytime you can get booked on a national show to talk about something is a that's cool. But also, like, do you ever notice on Apple Music when you, like, if there's an artist you listen to often, do you ever get, like, a little alert when they release something?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, I mean, that could have been, that could have definitely introduced or reintroduced the album to some fans. So I guess it's a missed opportunity.
I liked that they did do a little bit of, they floated some old clips and things, or... Did they do that, or was that on somebody else's?
Was it a fan site? That's all I was
didn't know it was a fan site. Actually, I don't know that they actually... yeah. But yeah, I agree. We'll see. I think that there's other milestones, because, I think that where there's a 20, there's a 25, so, like, you can sort of hopefully gear up towards another. So...
you ain't getting no younger, Josh. Okay.
I mean, that's true. It's true. But for nostalgia's sake, it feels like, even if... There are artists who have passed, honestly, whose, like, estates have, like, pushed out album, like, commemorative things about albums, like, regularly. So, like, I wouldn't lose any hope, but I just wish that as these, like, milestones hit, that they... Because even the ones that have already been done, like the Born to Sing reissue and that kind of stuff, like, and the sort of anniversary year... I didn't think any of it was as big of a splash as it needed to be.
Yeah.
Well, let's dig into the meat and potatoes of this episode. We're talking about all the things that never happened, honey. The ghosts of En Vogue past. What could have been, what could have been. First up, we're going to really dig into something which I think is really random. Like, this is the most random of all the things to me. The first is a possible television series produced by then husband and wife, Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold. Roseanne, you might know from The Roseanne Show. Tom Arnold was also on The Roseanne Show, but was also a comedian. But we're going to dig into sort of a lot of the components of maybe what could have been, why it wasn't, X, Y, and Z.
No, when you said Tom Arnold, I was going to be like, let's not talk about the husband. That is like...
Let's not talk about the husband. You don't want to talk about the husband.
Shout out to the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills fans. But no, do you remember like when Roseanne got on the Wendy show and had to check her because she was trying to like dig into like her husband, like her past with Tom Arnold? Did you ever see that clip?
Oh, no.
And Roseanne was like, well, you know all about husbands, Wendy.
I don't like talking about husbands, right, Wendy?
Right, Wendy?
Well, I don't mind talking about husbands. I don't mind. He's fabulous.
And that was like, that was like right as all the news was breaking about her.
Everybody's been unearthing all of the Wendy clips lately because of obviously the very sad predicament that Wendy's in. And En Vogue was on Wendy not too long before, maybe a couple of years before.
And did she say
show
Rona
ended.
like, and who are you? I was like,
and who are you? I can't.
We miss Wendy. I mean, that is quality entertainment.
Roseanne and Wendy was a lot because Roseanne matches that energy pretty well, that messy energy. So that's already kind of a weird foot, I think, to sort of step on with En Vogue of all people. So I get that, well, maybe, I don't know. We'll dig into it. But first things up, like maybe this could have been good for a number of reasons. One of those being exposure. Working with Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold, who are both prominent figures in the entertainment industry at the time, could have provided En Vogue with significant exposure to a wider audience. Secondly, industry connections and opportunities, with Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold likely having connections within the industry that could have really helped En Vogue secure opportunities for performances, collaborations, media appearances, X, Y, and Z. Creatively, Barr and Arnold may have had some innovative ideas for showcasing En Vogue's talents, potentially leading to unique and memorable projects that could have elevated the group's profile. Also, really interesting. They could have really crafted something maybe around them as a concept, thinking about what they were already good at, which was creating good television.
in my mind, like if I'm thinking like, what kind of show would this be? I'm thinking maybe a show about a girl group trying to make it. No, what is that too cliche?
I mean, I think it could have been like that, but when I think about what Roseanne was really good at the time, and the audience she was tapping into was like this the
middle class, like,
the lower middle class, like, you know, white America, whatever. And so basically, I feel like they would have tried
the people that Trump ended up.
But you know, it's interesting. There's a lot of like people of color that really love Roseanne. So
I mean, I grew up on Roseanne.
Yeah, so I mean, I could see something where it was like sisters, like in the house, like realizing that they, you know, had the talent and then like trying to make it as a group, but like a family something, I think would have probably like
not
been the sweet spot. I mean, you know, they go back home because daddy died or something, you know. So yeah. Additionally, producing a show with the backing of both of these two folks at the time could have provided really significant financial resources to En Vogue, allowing them to invest in high quality production, marketing, and other aspects to enhance their career. So of all the things that could have been great, there are probably some reasons why it didn't happen. One being creative differences. En Vogue and both Roseanne and Tom Arnold may have had conflicting visions for the show's direction, leading to disagreements that ultimately prevented the project from moving forward. Could have been a scheduling thing and a logistical challenge because busy schedules for all parties involved could have made it challenging to coordinate meetings, rehearsals, and production timelines, and could have resulted in delays or even the abandonment of the project. Financial constraints. Despite initial interest, securing funding for the show may have been difficult, especially if investors, producers, networks were hesitant to commit resources to a project with uncertain returns. And then personal issues, like we mentioned, Roseanne and Tom's personal relationship, which ended in divorce, could have created tensions or complications that spilled over into their professional endeavors, potentially contributing to the project's demise. In Stan Zimmerman's book, The Girls From Golden to Gilmore, which recounts stories about the women he's collaborated with, he mentions the failed En Vogue series. Specifically, he notes, quote, "There was so much craziness during that year on Roseanne. She and Tom seemed to thrive in that chaotic space. A biggie was when we were off the Radford lot helping Amy Sherman with her Cherry Street South of Maine pilot she wrote for Tom and Roseanne's production company. It was created as a vehicle for the female singing group En Vogue. But then the network, ABC, found out the four singers were not actors or funny, so they had to be totally recast." Well, that was not listed. Right, that was not listed as why it was probably a reason it didn't happen. And in the book, Stealing the Show, How Women Are Revolutionizing Television, writer-producer Amy Sherman recounts her experience when asked to write the pilot and meet the group, stating, "None of them could talk, and I thought, that's it. It's over." During one of Cindy's cameo appearances, she provided a slightly different version of events.
Okay, as for a sitcom produced by Roseanne and her then husband, yes, we did have a meeting. We did discuss doing a sitcom. We even went to a table reading. They had a script already written. I loved it. I thought it was a great idea because I like acting. But the group was divided on moving forward. Half of the group didn't want to do it. The other half thought, yeah, it's a good idea. And we could never do anything unless we all are in agreement, or back then. So we never moved forward with it, unfortunately. I thought it would have been actually a pretty good thing to do.
So, understanding that there are both sides here, where at this point, two people have said that it was En Vogue and their inability to perform, which is, you know, significant if true. And then you have this other recounting of events where Cindy is saying that actually the group was divided and didn't even think that it was a good idea. So what are your thoughts on this? And more specifically, like, who do you believe?
I mean, I always tend to believe the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like, but it's always interesting though, because there are a lot of different instances where there would be like two different sides who have like these really different recollections of what happened 20 years ago. But I'm really sure though, that Stan Zimmerman's book, I mean, I'm sure ABC was like, these 4 girls can't act. I mean, and not that they can't act because they did badly in an audition or something, but they're singers. Like, they don't have a history of acting. They haven't proven that they can act. So that's a concern, right? Because even if you think about, I remember hearing about Brandy when she did Moesha. I think it was a table read or something, an audition, and they were like, she's horrible. Like the network was like, what's happening? And that's when they put her with Debbie Allen? They put her with some acting coach. I believe it was Debbie Allen to help her act. And they ended up, being able to move forward. But I think for a television network, 4 leads, and none of them have acting experience, is kind of like a red flag.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that was the ultimate reason. But I also believe that Cindy said that 2 of them didn't want to do it. Because that seems to be a recurring theme as we, dive into the history of En Vogue. It seems like there's always a very, 50-50 split on who wants to do what.
Yeah. So
I think they're both true, but I'm pretty sure ABC was like, you got 4 non-actresses that you want to star in a sitcom, and maybe today, I think something like that wouldn't matter as much today because times have changed and there are a lot of singers and rappers and social media personalities that get deals just based on their following. But back in the early 90s, like, you had to have a resume, you had to have experience, like, you had to have something to get a show.
Well, and I think that, yeah, I agree. I mean, except for like the ironic part is that like Roseanne was nobody's actress. Like, so like it's kind of interesting because she was the boss in this case. So like, and she had a studio to report to. So like,
I was looking when I was rewatching Roseanne recently, and I was thinking like, I always thought like she did a pretty good job to be a comedian, who relatively came from nothing. But also they surrounded her with 2 other leads who were strong.
Oh yeah.
John Goodman and Laurie Metcalf. Like, they were bona fide, solid, strong, trained actors.
So they were going to pull it out of
exactly.
her.
Right.
And but when you got 4 leads and all of that.
So, they were, if any shortcomings Roseanne had, you had 2 trained pros that could help get her over the finish line. But if you got 4 non-actors and you're like, what is this? Like, I think ABC was like, hell no.
And I mean, to be fair, like of all of them, Cindy had the most experience because she had done obviously lots of pilots and things and had like done stage work and theater and all this other kind of stuff. Yeah. So like, but even
she didn't
then,
have a
like,
name as an actor, she didn't have it like anything that could say, oh yeah, she was a lead here or she did that,
And it's one thing to guest star and do well. It's a whole other thing to like have to carry a whole thing by yourself. So I don't know if I really would have imagined an En Vogue. I mean, the idea is interesting to me, but I don't know that, like, I prefer that they had spent, when I think about the legacy and the time we had, the tenure of the original 4, I'm happy that we didn't lose some of it for the sake of a TV show.
I don't know, but maybe it's so weird because it's kind of like playing what if. It's like, what if they did the show and it became a massive hit? Like, that would have been reason to stay together, right? Because, I mean...
It could have.
You know what I mean? Like, who knows? Like, it's... It's kind of like, what if? Like, if they did it, it became a hit, it's bigger than record label politics at that point, right? It's bigger than who's got a solo deal or I don't want to work with this producer or whatever. It's like TV money is much better than... music money, you know what I mean?
That's true.
With a sitcom, you're getting a per episode fee.
But baby, if they couldn't keep it together for an album, you can't have a girl leave a TV show and then you left with you can't write off like that. It just would have been way messier to have to figure out how to play it out.
They got a contract on the TV show. You can't just walk out. Like
that's true.
You can't leave a TV show.
That's true.
You have a contract and you got a certain number of episodes you got to do.
That's true.
So you can quit the music group, but you gotta show up on set and smile and read your lines.
Josie and the Pussycats, long tails and ears perhaps, guitars and sharps and flats, neat, sweet, a groovy song, you're invited, come along. Hurry, hurry, see all the pleasure, or maybe friends, we could be an ninja or perchance, be with us in Bangkok, makes no difference everywhere the action's at, we're involved with this or that.
Well, in the early 90s, to segue us to another sort of interesting concept, in the early 90s, there were discussions about En Vogue potentially starring in a remake of Josie and the Pussycats, a popular animated series from the 70s.
Josie and the Pussycats, Josie and the Pussycats, yeah.
Which later went on to be remade in the early 2000s. The idea was to create a live-action adaptation featuring En Vogue as the main characters. So this could have been really good for a number of reasons. Again, exposure, right? So starring in a live-action adaptation of Josie and the Pussycats, which is so beloved as an animated series, would have exposed En Vogue to a broader audience, including fans of the original comic and potentially new fans that were drawn to the film version. There was cross-promotion to be done. The film could have provided opportunities for En Vogue to cross-promote their music, potentially featuring their songs on the soundtrack or incorporating performances into the movie. Josie and the Pussycats also had a significant cultural following, and being associated with such a beloved franchise could have elevated En Vogue's visibility and cultural relevance. And then, the creative collaboration of it all. Working on a major motion picture would have allowed En Vogue to collaborate with filmmakers, actors, other creatives, and then hopefully expand their artistic horizons and potentially leading them to new opportunities in the film industry. So, despite the initial talks and excitement surrounding the project, it ultimately never materialized. Cindy did share this, though.
Is it true that En Vogue planned a Josie and the Pussycat remake? We discussed it, either doing that or something like it, but it just never materialized. We never moved forward with it. And yeah, you remember there was a Josie and the Pussycats remake, but we weren't involved.
So, for all the reasons that it could have happened, here's why it maybe didn't happen. So, again, disagreements over the film's direction, the portrayal of the characters, or the integration of En Vogue into a storyline could have led to the project's cancellation. Producing a live-action film requires investment, and if funding fell through or backers became hesitant, especially if something was bankable or not, the project may have been shelved indefinitely, as many films often are. En Vogue had a busy schedule at that point, so along with that, and the filmmakers and other potential cast members, it could have made for a challenging setup to find a mutually agreeable time frame for production, as well as securing the rights to adapt Josie and the Pussycats into a live-action film may have been complicated or expensive and could have led to some legal hurdles that prevented the project from moving forward. And then they had to consider the market. Shifts in the entertainment landscape or concerns about the marketability of a live-action Josie and the Pussycats film could have led studios or production companies to reconsider their investment in the project. So while the exact details of why En Vogue's remake of Josie and the Pussycats didn't happen may not be known widely, it's a cool glimpse into the different paths their career could have gone apart from just making music. So when we're reflecting on En Vogue's career and image during the early 90s, do you think that they were well suited for a project like a Josie and the Pussycats remake? Why or why not?
I would say no. I think they would have been more appropriate for a Sparkle remake or something. Josie and the Pussycats, I didn't watch the cartoon, but from what I saw from the live action movie, it just seemed like it was too young for them. They always had a very sophisticated image, and I know acting is something different than but anytime a musical group or an artist like that is doing anything that's a film that's singing or anything like that, to me I feel like the character has to be close to who they really are. You know what I mean? For example, Beyonce doing the Pink Panther movie, or gold member. You know what I'm saying? Like both of
Yeah.
those very like, I'm a singer in real life, I'm a singer in the movie, and you know, it's not too far off of a departure. Josie and the Pussycats being like this rock group type of thing, I just can't see En Vogue doing something like that, but I could totally see them being like a Sparkle-esque type of moment.
I think like it's cool. Like I like the idea of like a campy, in on the joke kind of awful movie. So like I could have seen it. It would have been nice to see it. I think the other thing we haven't necessarily said is the 90s were not necessarily like, we were not even half of, I wouldn't even say we were half of where we are now in terms of like cultural competence. And so I think there's like something to be said about some white man didn't want black women being Josie and the Pussycats. Like, I just imagine that had to be a topic of conversation.
In the cartoon, they were not black. I mean, I don't know anything about the cartoon.
One character was black. Yeah. But like, I would say, especially when you go into comic world, so many folks, especially, I mean, people now still are like, this must be true to the comic. It must be true to canon. Yeah. Like, you know, and so even back then, like the idea of taking that kind of liberty with casting would have probably pissed a whole lot of people who were loyal to that kind of to the cartoon or the comic, excuse me. And I think that would have been a direct line to whether it was marketable and bankable for them. So it's not lost on me that they remade it, you know, or they actually did make the Josie and the Pussycats live action film in like the 2000s. And they stuck exactly true to like the images and the characters and how they casted it. So,
and also that movie made no money, so there's that.
Yeah, it flopped hard, I think.
Yeah, but I also think that a group like En Vogue, to me, when you're a successful group, you only have a short window to really like maximize your time. You know what I mean? Because I think like most artists, if they're lucky, they get like a good 5 years of like riding high. You know what I mean? Like really like we are at the top. And after that, I feel like it's kind of downhill and you're fighting for relevancy. Like you're fighting to remain. You know what I'm saying? Like versus like naturally inclining and going up, up, up. After a while, you get to that point where you're on a downward slope and you're like trying to like slow down the fall, basically.
Right.
And I think it would have been nice for En Vogue to do something because they were so big. They were so prominent. They had so much potential.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to see them do something more in film, to have their own movie like the Spice Girls. Like they were able to capitalize off their little 5 years. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it would have been nice for En Vogue to do something. But in my mind, whatever they would have done, it would have needed to have more of a like black or urban, you know, feel to it. Cause even though they were crossover, I still feel like the bulk of their base was us. You know? So I would have wanted them to do something that just had a little bit more flavor, like a little bit more something. Like I never thought about this before, but really, seeing them like the remake of Sparkle, I just feel like that would have been amazing. Of course, it was 4 of them instead of 3, but I mean, they could have just...
Well, that's the same with Josie and the Pussycats. Like, they're 3, so I was like, why would they do that? How would you do that? But I mean, if you can take the liberties with Josie and the Pussycats, you can do it with Sparkle too.
Or just create like all of these shows. Like nothing's new under the sun, right? So every, you know, most of these plots for these types of movies are very similar, and you know what I'm saying. So they could have just came up with something that was quote unquote new. But really was just a remix of something else and put that thing out, you know?
Well, considering that, you know, nostalgia's in, reboots are in, all the things, do you think that there's still potential for En Vogue to explore some opportunities in film and scripted television? Or like what kind of projects now do you think that they could take advantage of that would align with their brand today?
Something on the Lifetime network. Lifetime seems to be giving away you know, deals left and right if you're black and you're over 40. So, you know, they've already done an En Vogue Christmas. Maybe they can do an En Vogue Halloween, an En Vogue Thanksgiving, an En Vogue Valentine's Day. I mean, you know.
I cannot.
No, I mean, I'm being facetious, but I'm being for real. Like, I'm being facetious, but I'm being for real. Because when I was watching the Wendy Williams, I briefly tuned into that doc, and it was too much for me. But like some of the previews for these movies, like they got a single black female part
single
2,
black female,
so-and-so's revenge. I'm like, girl.
Yep.
So
and it was
like,
the first one was so funny and ridiculous, and
literally, I mean, I'm gonna watch it, but I'm also gonna talk about it, you know?
Right.
So I definitely think that, I mean, being serious, I think that they could partner with Lifetime and really like figure it out. Like, you know, I mean, imagine, so they did it in Vogue Christmas, like an En Vogue love story, you know, or, you know, an En Vogue girls trip. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there are things they could do that could meet them where they are today. Because I do feel like where they are today as 3 women over 50, right? I mean, was Rona 50 or... Oh,
no,
well, 3 women who are mature in age. I think that is like the Lifetime audience. So I feel like they need to be pitching some stories. Like,
and I agree. I think like I'm also pissed, and I think I said this on the episode way back when we talked about En Vogue Christmas. I'm pissed that they missed the wave of Christmas movies on like Christmas television movies, because like it's become like a cultish thing now. Like everybody really loves like Hallmark, Lifetime, even like BET Plus,
BET
and like
has been doing the BET Christmas music. Christmas movies are employing black actors. Like,
yeah,
for real.
And VH1 does them now.
They could do another En Vogue Christmas. I mean, that's part 2. It's another one. Like, they should take advantage of that. Yeah, I mean, I think I absolutely feel like they could do something else.
I also think there's a lane for like a television movie that feels like kind of like you remember Star?
Mm-hmm.
But like if it's like a En Vogue is like trying to like bring up a new girl group, but not like reality television, but like a scripted like something where it's like En Vogue is like the people behind.
What if, okay, now if this happens, we got to get a check, Josh. What if they were all mothers, right? And their daughters come together and form a group. And so now they're like, mommies, we want to, we want to be singers too. And then the girls, they're like, okay, ladies, we've been through this, so we have to push them and help them and show, and then, let the adventure begin.
Or what if it's, you know what? Okay, let's take it out of En Vogue, like as a brand. Mm-hmm. What if it's that, I love that concept. What if it's that they're not actually singers, they're young girls, and it's about the mothers can't get along. They can't stand each other.
Because they used to be in a group?
It's like,
music involved.
Okay. They're just like, almost like Dance Moms. Remember Dance Moms so like Dance Moms, like that's reality, but the part of the dynamic was about the moms and how they got together and got along. And so I think it'd be really funny to do like a weird comedy thing where you have this group of young girls who all want to like start a girl group, and then they all get their mothers to invest in like, let's do it. Let's chase the dream. And then the mothers hate each other.
I feel like someone needs to give us a check. And so if this show comes to pass, like, we need a check. Cause that's a good idea, actually.
It would be really funny. And I think like the kitschy part, the sort of cute part is the fact that it's En Vogue, but you're never really hearing it. It's not on the nose. Like it's not necessary to reference it because like we see them as actresses outside of En Vogue too. And like, I think that'd be really, really fun. Especially if you can make it catty and nasty and like, like shady and shit, And
I feel like it should be on Lifetime. Like,
I mean, it should be. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So moving along from film and television, Let's talk about some collaborations with other artists. So there were lots of potentials that never came to be. So apart from Salt and Pepper, why didn't En Vogue collab with other artists? Notably their male counterpart, or as many think is their male counterpart, Boyz II Men. What other collaborations could En Vogue have pursued with other artists?
I mean, I definitely think Boyz II Men was like, they do feel like a brother and sister group. Like, they feel like counterparts. I don't know why they didn't work together, but I think that was a missed opportunity. I think when I think about Allure and 112 when they did All Cried Out, like that's something I could have seen Boyz II Men and En Vogue doing, you know?
I agree. I think I would have like, maybe not like formal duets. Like I could deal with, I don't want to I don't want to imagine any other artists on any of the sort of like pivotal En Vogue songs, like as a shared sort of thing. But I really wish they would have tore up some remixes. Like that would have been really cool to do some remixes with other folks featured. And not just like rappers. I think like it would have been clever for them to, like you mentioned, do other collaborations with like Boyz II Men or other sort of male groups, or even like another girl group or something. That could have been fun. So are there any instances where En Vogue was in talks or rumored to collaborate with other musicians that maybe we don't know about, but never happened? Thinking specifically about how apparently Toni Braxton was supposed to feature an En Vogue duet on her Sex and Cigarettes album back in 2018.
I remember that. Like, I'm looking at the Amazon link now, and it's still up there. Like, it's a song called Tear Me Up, Knock You Down, featuring En Vogue. It's still, like, on the Amazon site for that Sex and Cigarettes album. I would have loved to hear it. I can't imagine what that would sound like now, but...
Yeah, it kind of threw me
really
for a
random.
loop. Very.
You know what you should do, Josh? You should go to Cameo... Spend $100 and ask Terry about this song.
Okay, we can pool our money together. That's what we can do.
Okay, I think that's a job for Matt, the producer of the podcast. Matt, we have to do research. So,
I got 25 on it. I've
got 5 on it. And, we could put our money together and ask Terry.
If you would like to contribute to the En Vogue Fund, then write to us at Part of Us.
If you all want,
EVF@gmail.com.
answers to your questions, please reach out and we will go straight to the source.
You know, that would be really funny, actually, is if we pooled money together through like a GoFundMe so that with each episode, the questions that we really want to know, we were able to go straight to Cameo to get them answered.
Or go to Cameo and be like, can you please come on our podcast? We just have a few questions.
Every episode, we just like, please, please, please. They just reply, no. But yeah, I think it would be really interesting to imagine what that kind of duet would sound like. I can't hear it, but clearly somebody could, because it was enough to at least dream up or list on an obscure Amazon product page. So moving along though. So thinking about endorsement deals and brand partnerships, En Vogue did engage in commercial endorsements for like Diet Coke and Converse, but why were there no endorsements for hair and makeup products? According to a New York Times article, they had an endorsement with Maybelline. Perhaps, maybe. So when you think about En Vogue and brand partnerships, where were the missed opportunities?
You know what's interesting? I was watching an episode of the Sherry Shepherd show. Well, I was watching, not an episode because but I was watching a clip on YouTube, and Jodie Watley was up there this week, and she was talking about how back in the day, like she had to fly herself to like New York and different places to do photo shoots with Vogue and Harper's Bazaar because her label didn't understand like the marketing of like what does fashion have to do with music? You know, like it wasn't a thing. And so when I think, even though En Vogue is a few years after Jodie became a solo artist, I think at that time, you really didn't see as many groups and artists doing that back then. Like now it's synonymous, right? Because most recording artists have 360 deals, and so the label has an invested stake in making sure that they become a big brand and that they get these other endorsements. But back then, like if En Vogue is doing, Maybelline or whatever, like the label doesn't get, they weren't getting any money from that. So I don't think there was really an incentive to push, these other opportunities, even though it may make sense from a marketing and brand perspective today. But back then you just really didn't see a whole lot of artists, particularly Black artists, doing those types of deals.
Yeah, I would have really loved, of all the things, I think it would have made the most sense for them to really have had like some kind of beauty product moment, like the glam of it all. Like
it could have been
a cover girl moment.
Yeah.
They could have reworked like a jingle or something. Like it could have been really, really cute. And because they were fashion girls, and we'll get into like a fashion line thing later, but like they were also like beauty girls, like neck up, pretty girls.
They had face. But if you think about it, like who was like the first Black cover girl that you remember seeing in a commercial?
Like ever?
Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, as far as like a, TV ad or whatever, like, because the first one I remember is Brandy.
Oh, like celebrity.
Yeah, like celebrity. Yeah. Like as far as like, like a singer that ended up, or rapper or actress or whatever that ended up being the face of a cosmetics line.
Yeah. I mean, I think like that, I think something shifted. Well, and I think it could be traced back to when you think about like supermodels, like, and the reverence and sort of like explosion of like the supermodel, like eventually like mid 90s, late 90s, like it flipped to be heavy on the celebrity side and less on the like model side. So like, I think when En Vogue was probably coming out, there was probably like less of there was more of a hesitation to really sort of have celebrities front like beauty and fashion in this way. So yeah, I would agree. Cause I mean, once you got to the Brandy era, like it was like, if you were a teen pop something, you were pretty much on track to make sure you got you a Maybelline, a CoverGirl, a Revlon, or something, So
I think En Vogue was just a few years too early.
I think that's constantly their story, though. I feel like that's constantly their story. It's like they were a bit if you look early to everything.
Destiny's Child, for example, right? Like, Destiny's Child came out in 98. They really blew up around 2001, 2002. And they were doing, a lot of, big mainstream ads as a group, right? I don't know if they had a beauty contract, but I know they had other endorsements, and, they had Barbie dolls and, other things as a group. So yeah, En Vogue may have been just a few years too early, and which sucks because a constant theme with En Vogue has been money, right? Or lack of it. So had they been a few years later, they could have got some, some extra coin.
Well, in the same line as beauty, let's talk a little bit about an En Vogue fashion line. So as we mentioned, they had deals with Diet Coke, Converse, and apparently Maybelline, and had showcased designs from renowned fashion houses like Moschino, Christian Lacroix, Chanel, and Rafat Ozbek. I don't know how to say that one. That's a newbie. In their music videos. Obviously, fashion girls down. So it's no surprise that En Vogue had expressed interest in launching its own fashion label. Assisting them with this endeavor was the marketing and advertising agency Amodio Petty, led by partners John Amodio and Ken Petty, who were collaborating with William Morris Agency to explore ways of leveraging celebrity star power into product lines, which is what we were just talking about. So En Vogue agreed to endorse designer clothing, specifically a spring collection created by Byron Lars and slated for release in spring of 1994. The plan was for the line to be promoted through music videos aired on VH1, BET, MTV, and also through mail order via a fashion magazine. Byron, known for his high-end label, commented, quote, "We discussed various options. They weren't interested in being designers themselves. They simply wanted a designer to collaborate with them and be associated with their brand," end quote. The En Vogue line was going to include a range of items spanning from wigs to shoes and all the essentials in between. quote, the music videos will allow us to promote the apparel without a heavy advertising budget, Mr. Amodio said. Nearly 20 years later, in 2018, En Vogue adorned themselves in Byron Lars designs. Let's talk about En Vogue's pursuit of a fashion line in the early 90s, highlight the group's interest in expanding their brand beyond music and into fashion a little bit. So, I don't think I would have wanted to see an En Vogue fashion line, but this is an interesting concept. I'll say that. I think like the idea of a collaboration across designers makes a lot of sense. But I wouldn't want no En Vogue wig.
No, it's really interesting to hear that the marketing and advertising agency, Amodio Petty, they were collaborating with William Morris, who was like a huge talent agency back at that time to leverage, like stars and their marketing power. That's just so interesting because now that is like standard, right? That's standard practice, right? If you have your talent agency or your management agency, they have, a division really devoted to trying to get you attached to other products, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This just kind of reinforces that idea of, En Vogue was on like, they were so early on, they were doing something that wasn't normal. It wasn't the usual. Them doing a fashion line, not really interested, but it reminds me of Beyonce and what she just did with the Renaissance. And what was that designer? Was it what was that line she just did?
Was it Balmain?
Balmain. Yeah. Like once again, En Vogue at the forefront.
It could have been, yeah. Actually, I'm gonna twist my opinion on this because I think that if it was like them aligning with like the higher fashion houses, that makes a lot of sense.
And like it wasn't about really selling the garment per se, like putting it in Macy's, but just like we are fashion.
Like I don't want House of Darion. I didn't want House of Darion for En Vogue. That's not what I want. So when I saw En Vogue was going to release some wigs, that's what I was like, what? That gives me Vivica Fox collection and not like high fashion girly.
It's more like, we are fashion, these design, we are front row at the fashion week,
with their shades on, looking nasty.
They were just a few years too early. That is just, that's kind of unfortunate. Because like, if you really think about it, so much of what they were trying to do then, so much of what they were setting the blueprint, essentially like they were setting the blueprint for what artists today are doing as standard practice.
Yeah. And to be fair, this is the lane I think they could still take advantage of if they really wanted to. So like, I see what people are doing now with like collaborations. When you go look at like Jay Bolin, who is a stylist, who like also plays around, I think he designs as well, or at least sort of has collections. He's pulled like these notable Black women. He works with SWV and he created a whole collection around SWV or with them at the sort of fore. He did the same with Michelle Williams from Destiny's Child. He did one with LaToya Luckett. He did one with...
For like 1 week, he had SWV on all the blogs. So like a week.
They
were like, we're going to Vogue. Like, we don't know what they did at Vogue, but we know they were in the building.
Right. Like,
they were there. They were present. And
that's the lane that they need to be talking to him because SWV heard the critique loud and clear on the Escape show. Yeah. And they went and said, you're not going to catch us slipping. And now keep in mind, I feel like En Vogue has had and still does have these fashion moments when it matters most, right? Like they hit a red carpet at an awards show. The look is going to be together. It's these like sort of this larger thing that anytime people go look at En Vogue, they were known as these fashion girls. They have to always be that way. Like that's just part of the brand. And so I just want that moment for them because I think it could be really powerful to say that women in late 40s, 50s, 60 can be like killing the game still. So, but what do we think like at the time to round out this particular portion of things? What do you think is the reason that didn't actually happen? Like it's to note that En Vogue allegedly only met with Byron Lars twice. And then, perhaps it just sort of fizzled. So why do you think it didn't happen?
I think just like I was saying, I think it just was not standard. It just wasn't something that was the norm at the time. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't a blueprint of like success where people were like, this is what we do. This is how we, you know, navigate and make these brands combine and make sense, right? The brand of an artist and the brand of a fashion line. I just think there hadn't been enough people who had done it successfully. And I think the group didn't maintain their status as, you know, commercially viable and a successful group. They didn't maintain that status long enough to continue to get the opportunity to try, you know? Because after a certain amount of time where you kind of become like, oh, we got dropped from our label. Like once you get dropped, like no one is clamoring to be like, hey, come endorse this. Like you've been dropped. Like, especially back then, like when was that? Like 2000, 2001? Like that isn't like, you're not a prime time candidate for anything. Like,
yeah.
So I just think the timing was bad and they didn't get to really pull it together. And also I'm sure just them having to agree with things to move in one direction, I'm sure that was difficult. And if you don't, if you don't have a strong management team that's like, you know, convincing you to sort of go one way or the other, I think it's probably very difficult to get everyone on the same page at the same time.
I would put my money on that being the reason, because I would imagine that with four women comes four strong women comes four different ideas around, even when it comes to fashion, like where to put their support and energy and money behind it. Because, you know, it's an investment from all ends. So, and
also it's like, what are we getting from this? Like, yeah, we get clothes, but is that money in the pocket? You know what I mean? Right. Like what is, you know, there's a bigger picture to it, you know?
Well, that sort of wraps us up on this episode of all the things that could have been. The woulda, the coulda, the shoulda.
Coulda, woulda, shouldas.
Thank you all for listening to this episode. We hope that you will continue to share your thoughts with us and engage with the podcast by emailing us at partofusevf@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on all the socials, and we will see you next episode.
Bye.
This episode of Part of Us at En Vogue Fancast was researched, written, produced, and edited by Matthew at Culture Inject Productions. We're more than just a podcast. We're a fan community. You can keep up to date on En Vogue and chat with other fans by visiting En Vogue Craze on Facebook. You can also follow us on YouTube and Instagram at En Vogue Craze and Twitter at Part of Us Fancast. Part of Us and En Vogue Fancast is not endorsed by En Vogue, E1 Music, or En Vogue Records, and is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. En Vogue and its names, images, and audio clips are registered trademarks and or copyrights of their respective copyright holders.
Josh, what do you think about Charles and Netta?
My spirit is so exhausted by Charles and Netta. Like,
because this picture I see of them right now is wearing me thin.
But have you seen the clips of them leaving certain places?
Clapping.
And it's a clap track,
yeah.
but it's they did one outside the White House, and nobody was around.
Like, nobody was around outside the White House to be clapping for y'all. That is crazy.
Yeah,